Well, guys, after that, it only shows that the craziness in the path has just begun and things are about to get insanely intense. Hey guys, coming up for The Path, Season 1, Episode 8, The Shore, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, as I told you guys in my last review. For me, the show just keeps getting better. I mean, it started off as a really good show that didn't hook me. By Episode 4, I was hooked, and then Episode 7 really showed me what potential this show can do, and this episode continues to be fantastic, and I really think from here it's just going to keep getting better and better, and really, next week's episode looks extremely intense, and I really think this season's going to end up extremely intense, and really unpredictable as well. There's a lot to talk about in this episode. In many ways, this episode was the calm before the storm. Like, I think it's really showing that, setting up things for the end of the season. But there was a lot of big things that happened in this episode. But let's just get into it. Something I really love in this episode is the division of characters here, the way that everyone was divided, the way that everyone really had their own thing to do. I definitely really love. But let's just get into it. And for the first, 10 minutes of this episode, things really feel like we're in some sort of nightmare because we see Callie's breathing heavily and looking down Silas' dead body. And at this point, we don't know if he actually killed Silas. And I was left wondering as well, did he actually kill him? And he leaves his, he leaves his house and he goes outside to walk around and clear his mind because one, as we know, when you commit a wrong, you're supposed to walk. That's what you're supposed to do. And two, he just really needs to clear his mind. You can tell this is really affecting him. He drops his keys, he approaches his car, and like I've said before, I think we're really starting to see Cal crack very slowly. He hasn't cracked yet, but he's very slowly cracking, definitely. You can definitely see that here. One of his fellow cult members, Isaiah, asks if he can help him, and Cal tells him it's just his keys. Isaiah asks where he's headed this late in the day, and Cal says he couldn't sleep, and he thought he'd take a drive, and Isaiah says they are all on pins and needles tonight, obviously because they now have a new place to go, and because of what the Myris, they have a new place to go and everything, and they know that obviously, the cops and people like that don't really trust them and things like that. So he says if he needs anything, let him know. Cal says he will do that. He thanks him. He then gets into his car, but not before taking Silas's body with him. Unfortunately, his body won't fit in the trunk, and like I said, this is a very horrifying scene, and you still don't know if he actually killed Silas, and Cal shoves it in so it fits, and Isaiah then opens the gate for Cal as he leaves. He then sees Mary's dad, who angrily asks how much he will pay him for Mary, and again, I don't actually know if Mary's dad is in this scene right now, and Cal says that the next time he will see him, he will finish the job. Cal then goes into the woods, he stumbles, dragging Silas's body, probably to bury him, and again, we don't actually know if it's there. I'm assuming that it is, because it seemed like it from this episode, but maybe that was just a very convincing, maybe that was just Cal convincing himself that Silas is dead. I mean, again, remember, when Mary was there, she never saw Silas, she never said hi to Silas, she never mentioned Silas. She didn't even make contact with Silas. So it really does seem odd that Silas would just come into the scene when Mary had just left. So I still don't fully believe that Silas is dead. I still feel that some of this might be in Cal's mind. And this next scene, definitely we get something in someone's mind. We see Sarah's walking in the middle of the street. She then sees Hawk listening to music and smiles, but then sees a truck coming his way, screams her to move, and then Hawk turns into Summer, her daughter, who we finally get her name in this episode. I feel like I've been searching for a name, and finally we get a name here. She sits in the road smiling. Sarah saves her just in time, but then she turns to one of Silas's Pachamama idols with a Medusa-like head, and Sarah frantically wakes up. Luckily, it was just a horrible nightmare, but you can tell that there was a reason why she had this dream, and the imagery in this episode, I really gotta applaud, because that's one of the things I think The Path does best, is that haunting imagery, the fact that it feels like a dreamlike state. That's really how the beginning of this episode felt, but then we really get into this episode once we see Eddie and Hawk. They get off a bus to PA to take the walk for 250 miles, because, they have agreed to take that 250-mile walk, and really this is them getting to learn more about each other, getting to figure out more about each other, and I really love seeing that. Eddie asks Hawk how he's feeling. He says hungry, and Eddie says he can't be hungry already because they have a long walk to go. Hawk says that he's just messing with him, he's fine, and Eddie asks if he's sure about this because they can always just cross the street, and if they wait there will be buses that come back every time. Hawk says he's sure, and Eddie tells him that this is it and where it all began, and basically gives him the history of why they take these walks and how it all started. And I thought it was a really nice scene. We see that he tells him that Meyer was doing secret psychological warfare, experimenting on soldiers, Vietnam vets, and one day it hit him how messed up it all was, and he just walks out through those gates, leaving his life in the army behind, and everything else, as well, not knowing what the rest of his life would be, just knowing that he couldn't do what he was doing anymore. And it's a really great scene because, one, we find out that Eddie really was alive before Myerism existed, which I don't think is something that Hawk knew, because, Hawk has been exposed to his entire life. Eddie, of course, wasn't. He was there for the discovery of it and for the creation of Myerism and everything. And two, it also really, I think this episode in general really shows us more of Eddie's character. Both of this, the one thing I love about Eddie and Hawk is that they both get to deal with their personal pains. We both really do see what they're going through, and it really makes these two closer than ever. So a soldier then tells them to take their hands out of the bags, and basically Eddie tells him that they're just going to walk and passing through. He looks through the bags, finds rocks, and Hawk says that they leave them at every stop, lightening their physical substance. And Eddie says it's really just for exercise, not wanting to reveal, I think, their true intentions, because the military are clearly anti-Myris. I mean, we know from that scene, obviously, and Eddie's trying to, decrease their suspicions and everything. So I really like that scene. Cal then finishes digging Silas's grave, looking exhausted. At this point, I feel like we're pretty much to believe that Silas is dead, but again, I just don't necessarily believe it, just because of the way that scene was constructed last week. And maybe that's just the genius of the creator of the show and the way that that was done, but for me, it just didn't seem real. It seemed like there definitely was more to it, and basically he sees basically he grabs a shovel, he sees an owl, not knowing really what to make of it, and I kind of saw that as someone looking down upon him, just like someone looking at him knowing what he did. He can't look anyone in the eye knowing he actually killed someone. And Sarah is driving, she goes into the Myrist compound, and what I love about this scene is that everyone is really applauding her that's a Myrist, but everyone that's not a Myrist is really freaked out. We see the government has caused a state of removal because of what the Myrist did with the compound, how they got the removal of the Honduran immigrants along with the children. And the Myris cheer Sarah in victory. To them, this is a victory, but to everyone else, it's not. And I like that Sarah really doesn't feel it is a victory. She thanks them, tells them it's not necessary. Her mother says the light has never shined more brightly through her or more powerfully. Her father says that she has always been the guide in their family, and to see her up there guiding the whole movement was incredible. She thanks them, lets them leave, and Felicia then goes up to Sarah, says she'd love to have a private chat with her later, woman to woman, and asks her if she'd be open to it, and she says yes. And I think this is really setting up Sarah's arc for the rest of the season. So Hawk and Eddie continue the walk. Cal drives home from the burial covered in mud and then sand, then sees something in the backseat of his car, almost drives off the road, then starts drinking while he's driving. And we really see how much this has affected Cal. I mean, physically, mentally, he's drinking constantly in this episode. The fact that he's drinking while driving, I mean, I really thought some bad was going to happen because, they tell us not to drink and drive, common sense, and don't do that. But obviously, Cal doesn't really have any common sense right now because I think he still kind of is in this dreamlike state, not knowing if he actually killed Silas, believing he did, but again, we don't know. Mary is then taking drugs, and Betsy comes in, and I really do feel bad for Betsy because you can clearly tell that Mary is using her. She tells her she wasn't at breakfast, so she made her some, and Mary says she isn't hungry. Betsy asks if she's cold based on what she's wearing, which is a tank top and shorts, which is weird that she's wearing that, but Mary assures her she's not. But Betsy hands her a blanket despite she tells Mary she has work duty, and then tells Betsy she's a little cold, and then they start making out, and it seems like to Mary, this is just a sexual relationship. All she wants to do is just try this out, see if she is bisexual, I guess, try that out. But for Betsy, it's clearly more. She clearly does want to do more for Mary, while Mary just wants to have sex with her and make out with her. But to Betsy, it seems like it's a lot more, which is very interesting. So Cal's in the bathroom. He's splashing water in his face, then puts his shirt back on as he goes to a place for people who are sent away. I don't know what it's called, but he tells him that he's there for Sean, and it's clear that he's going to do as Mary has asked, probably because he I think himself doesn't feel he belongs with Mary. I feel like he himself feels that Mary doesn't deserve him. I think he thinks that Mary deserves someone like Sean and not someone like him, that he has wronged Mary, and because of that, Mary and him, they just can't be together right now, which is sad, but I really think it's true that he himself feels he can't really be with Mary. So basically, we then see Felicia tells Sarah that Cal is reckless and will bring the movement down. His demons will get the better of him. She says no one has seen him since last night, and this is not the first time he's been unpredictable recently. And Sarah does admit that it's been a challenging time for him, and Felicia says she knows her and Cal have a special relationship, but this isn't the time for that change. Coming as Meyer once prophesied at the highest levels of their movement, she just wants her to breathe a little on the possibility of taking a bigger leadership role, and you can tell that Felicia really thinks that Sarah has the potential to lead the Myris movement, and honestly, I think that she does. The fact fact that she was able to do all that, get the entire movement on her side, and basically do what Cal wanted her to do, I think is incredible. But then she finds a gift, and it's the same idol from the nightmare, and asks Felicia what it's doing there. This really is haunting her. She doesn't know why it's here, but for whatever reason, she keeps seeing it throughout this episode. So then we see all the agents think the Myris are wackos, and it's bullshit, and what they did to the Hondurans, and Abe tells them to turn it off, and he thinks it's nonsense, and it's just a bunch of political theater. He says it's undocumented, nothing is getting solved, it's just Uncle Sam kicking a can down the road as per usual, and when they have a murderous cult doing more good than they are, they know they have problems. One of the agents asks if he has a murder case yet, and Abe says he's working it. He just sent out to get Jason Kemp's police records, but it's hard to get paperwork out of Peru, and of course we know Jason Kemp was the husband that may have died, may have committed suicide, we still don't know what happened to him, but the boss asks if he could have a meal with him to thank him for his hard work, and he says if he wants him to take him to lunch, he has no problem with that. The boss says he wants him and his wife to join him and the missus at the club, say tomorrow night, and he says he needs to check the calendar, but it should be fine. The other agents tell him that this means a promotion is coming his way, but Abe just thinks of it as just a dinner, he doesn't think of it as much more. But what I really love about this scene is the way it shows Abe's, it really getting invested and knowing more at the movement than everyone else does. To them, this is just something crazy. Well, I think Abe really starting to make sense of it. Like, he's really starting to figure out what is this movement really, what does it really mean to him? Because I really think to Abe, this is a lot more than just some movement. I really think it's for him, he's kind of thinking of it as a means to possibly save his daughter and as a means to help him, which is very interesting. I really do like seeing that. So Eddie and Hawk are then at this homeless shelter. Hawk says it's not vegetarian, and of course, I believe that Ashley was vegetarian. Eddie says that it's not. Hawk says just because they're hungry doesn't mean they should eat, and Eddie says they take what they are given. A homeless man compliments Hawk on his boots and tells him he better keep them on tonight. Eddie tells him to back up. We don't know if this man's like a child molester or anything. He just seemed very creepy and very sketchy, and they both sit down. They then sleep, and Hawk starts coughing, and Eddie asks if he's okay. Hawk says he just feels like he has bugs all over him, but it's probably just a feeling. He then asks Eddie if he's good because they have beds in the other room. Eddie says he's not going to leave him and he's fine, and finally Hawk admits why he really feels upset and why he really is feeling the way he does throughout this entire episode, because he tells straight out what happened with Ashley and how they think they're freaks and they don't want Ashley to have anything to do with him if he's in the movement, and Eddie asks what he's going to do, and Hawk says he's going to keep walking until he figures it out, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're just supposed to continue this walk. That's the point of it, is for them to take this walk to figure things out, and he still doesn't really know yet. So in the morning, Eddie wakes up Hawk, tells him that they should probably get going if they're going to make their mile, and the priest tells them if they want to join him in a prayer, they can, and Eddie says the prayer along with everyone. However, Hawk doesn't. I thought it was interesting that Eddie says it and Hawk doesn't, probably because Hawk is just really conflicted with if he's in the movement or if he's not in the movement. I mean, all his life, he has been in this movement, but he's really contemplating if he's still in this movement, and that's something I definitely really like seeing. So Sarah's home with Summer and gives her pancakes, and Summer's complaining because she prefers Eddie's, and Sarah says that she invented what he does. Sarah then sees Cal in a state of confusion and despair. She asks where he's been. He says he needs help, and she says they need to go straight upstairs and says they need to get him cleaned up. And we don't know exactly why Cal is there, what he's doing, but Mary then meets up with Sean and is surprised to see that he's back, and he says that Cal came and got him because this is where he's supposed to be, and Mary hugs him, and it's a really nice scene between those two. I did like seeing those two reunite because you can really tell that Mary wanted this. But again, I don't really know if Mary loves Sean or if she's just trying to test something out. But Abe and Jocelyn are then at the dinner with the Mccluskys, which that's the name of his boss, the Mcclusky, who talks about how they never go to restaurants anymore because they can't even hear themselves talk, and Abe says they never go anywhere anymore because of the kids. Mcclusky thanks him for his service to the department, and his hard work and excellent instincts have done them proud. Abe thanks him, and Mcclusky says that Abe's family made sacrifices, and he thanks them both, and this then tells him basically the real reason why he's invited to this dinner, which is really shocking and probably the worst news that Abe could have gotten right now. He tells him that they are officially done with the Myris case, and this isn't just Abe in a state of confusion. I feel like he's confused with himself. Like, I feel like Abe himself is starting to enjoy this movement and start to actually want to be a part of it. I feel like it's something that he wants to actually do because he wants to have that faith that maybe they can actually save his daughter, because we know his daughter has PS, and we know that he wants them to save his daughter from that. And Mcclusky says that with all the press around the immigrant staff, Senate Lieutenant DeGraw took an interest and got Homeland Security involved, so they'll be taking over from here on out, and he assures him that this is a good thing. The departments did the legwork, and they got the credit for that, and now DHS handles it, and Abe asks if DeGraw is the guy that's making a play for Attorney General, and Mcclusky says he tries to stay out of it, and Abe says they both know what it is, and Abe says it's not about enforcing the law, it's about what some idiot politician decides, and tells him nothing is going to happen. The case will get kicked over the IRS for years, and they're talking about a potential murder that the IRS have committed, at least one, maybe more. It's a typical government bullshit, and tells him the only thing more fucked up than DHS is FEMA, so maybe they can bring the guys in, get his house fixed, and Mcclusky tells him to get a hold of himself, and Abe leaves, and you can really tell that Abe is slowly losing control, because I think he actually wants to be part of this movement. This was a movement that he actually really cared about, and actually meant a lot to him, and now the fact that this case could be over, he himself is starting to lose control, which is very interesting. So I really did love that. Eddie and Hawk are then at a diner. The waitress brings them 1 tea and 2 mugs. And let me just say right now, I do not think this is the end of Abe taking on this case. I feel like he's going to continue this case despite the fact that Mcclusky just told him they're done with it. Abe is going to continue it because he wants to continue the case himself. He feels like he needs to continue this case if he wants to feel good about himself. I mean, this is clearly not the end of him taking on this case. I know there's going to be more to it, and this is far from the end, definitely. So Eddie and Hawk are then at this diner. The waitress brings them 1 tea and 2 mugs and asks them if they want anything else. Eddie says that this is it and thanks her, and Hawk says they could split 1 piece. They have enough for it, and Eddie says that they do for now, but they don't know what's coming, so he thinks they can probably make it to the next shelter tonight, which is a very good decision because we'll get to what happens next, but if not, he thinks they should probably stay there until it warms up. And again, they don't know where they're going, but they're just kind of continuing this walk, and Hawk then asks him if he stopped loving Sarah when he had his affair with Miranda Frank, because he pretty much believes that Eddie did have this affair with Miranda Frank, which we know, of course, he didn't, but Eddie says he knows what he's going to say. His transgress in Peru had nothing to do with his love for Sarah, and Hawk says he tells him stuff, real stuff, and he talks to him like they're in session, and Eddie says it's the truth, and Hawk asks what happened, and Eddie says he was just going through something where he was trying to find where he really belonged, and he's not lying. That really is what was going on. The whole season, Eddie's been trying to figure out, am I a Meyerist, am I not? You know, he's really been confused about that, and Hawk asks if he found it, and a couple then comes up to them, asks them where they're headed. They saw them in the freezing cold, and they must be headed somewhere, and they thought that it would be a Christian thing to do to offer them a ride, and Eddie says that they're on a walk. The man says that they are headed to Brighton Beach, and if they're going anywhere in that direction, and Hawk says that Eddie grew up there, and Eddie says that he didn't really. He used to go to Coney Island as a kid in the summer, get into trouble, and the man asks if that's where they're going. They have warm spots in the back seat for them, and Hawk says this is fate telling them to go, and really it is kind of an awakening for Eddie. That when they get to Coney Island, I'll get to that, but it probably is maybe the best scene in this episode is when they get to Coney Island. So Cal tosses in bed. He then goes to the bathroom. He throws up, which Summer sees, and she asks Cal if he's going to be okay, and asks if he transgressed, and Sarah says that not every illness is of spirit, some of it is just of body, and she asks Cal how he's doing. He says he's better, and is sorry if he disturbed her, and Sarah says that she was up, and Nicole's been texting her. It sounds like she's in early labor, and she might be heading over there soon. Summer says that he woke her up, and basically, he sounds awful. Sarah says it's alright, it's just leaving his system, and she says that she'll get him some water and tells Summer to go back to bed, who asks if Cal is going to stay with them until Eddie gets back, and Sarah says he's going to stay with them until he feels better, and they help people who need them, like the immigrants. Summer goes to bed, and that is when Cal tells Sarah that he's really not alright, and I was thinking that he was going to tell Sarah about Silas's murder, which is interesting because he never tells her about this murder, which we'll get into, but basically she tells him to come here, shows him donations from the website that show him how much came in the beginning of the year and how much came in today, and it's staggering. Cal says it's money, and she says each of it comes from a person, an eager new soul, ready to believe because of him, and she knows the weaknesses he has for alcohol is the rock of, that he carries, that they all have, that they all have them, but she just wants him to know that every period of transition and every change is difficult, sometimes even meaningful, but he was right. They saw it as a sensitive place, more legitimate for the movement. They're on the verge of they're going to be a powerful force in the world. It's all coming true, and as she says this, Cal notices this idol sitting on the couch, and he seems startled by it, and I'm pretty convinced that that is what he saw in that car, because whatever he saw in the backseat of that car, it scared him. We don't know what that is, so I'm assuming that that idol is what he saw, also because of the fact that he thinks he killed killed Silas. I mean, that also scares him because he feels like this is kind of haunting him, that Silas's presence, while it's not alive, he is haunting him by not being alive. So Eddie and Hawk then go to Coney Island. Eddie tells him he has not been there in forever. Hawk notices that no one's there, and Hawk sees an ad for a freak show, asks if they still have that. Eddie says it's just some old signs, and Hawk asks what a funnel cake is, and Eddie says he's never been to any place like this. And this really is Eddie and Hawk getting to realize a lot more about each other, and Hawk realizing that there's a lot more going on with his father than he thought, and that Eddie really is a person, and I like seeing that. Hawk asks if they should put a rock down. Eddie says it's not one of those sacred sites, and Hawk says it is kind of for him, because this is really where Eddie feels good about himself. And Hawk puts the rock down, asks Eddie if he's worried. He says they're too far off track. He knows he's worried. Eddie says it's going to be fine. Hawk says they could just walk fast, like when Meyer did it, not knowing what was next. He just knew he couldn't stay where he was. And Eddie asks if he said that, and Hawk says yes. Eddie starts to cry, says there's a lot of memories there. Hawk says they're good memories. Eddie says they were with his brother, and Hawk asks if he's going to be all right. Eddie says it's good, and they continue to walk. And Eddie then points out certain spots that him and his brother used to go to. It's a really nice scene because you really do see all these things that mean so much to Eddie, and really how they mean so much more to him than now that they ever did, because he hasn't really felt this good about himself in a while. And Eddie says that basically Hawk asks why he never tells him these stories, and Eddie says that he never asked. Hawk says he did when he was a kid, but it always seemed to annoy him. And then they go to the boardwalk, and Eddie remembers clam rolls that him and his brother used to eat, but unfortunately they're $11, which is almost all the money they have left. But Hawk doesn't care because he can tell this is something that, you know, enlightens Eddie, something that just brings him joy, and he wants to try his clam rolls himself, because I feel like Hawk wants to have that thing that Eddie has. You know, he wants to have his own Coney Island. He doesn't know what it is, but like Eddie has Coney Island, he wants his own Coney Island that makes him feel good, and he doesn't know what that is yet. Hawk buys them anyway. Eddie decides he wants them too, and I thought it was a really nice scene there. So Cal is then in bed. He's trying to sleep, but he keeps tossing and turning, and he then sees a note that is stuck to a chair, and he reads it, and we don't know what's on this note, which again, it's interesting because there's like, we don't know what's on the backseat of his car. We don't know what's on this note, and whatever it is startles him, and I feel like, again, it has to do with Silas, and I don't know what it is. So Nicole's then in her pool. Her kids are acting very rambunctious, and she tells him to stop, and she's trying to have an underwater birth, basically. Sarah tells Gabby about the dream she had saving Summer, but it wasn't Summer, it was the idol, and she thinks it's about Hawk being away, and she's very anxious, but Gabby does bring up a good point that she's not just her in her dreams. We're everything. And I never really thought about that before, but yeah, that's not wrong. I mean, when you think of a dream, that's what you're thinking about, and you really are everything in that dream, and including the idol. Maybe she's the one holding herself back, afraid to embrace her true power, and I honestly think that's true. I don't think Sarah feels that she really is ready, or that she's good enough to be this leader of Myris. I feel like she herself just feels like she's not as good, or she just doesn't feel like she's ready to do that. And I mean, it really is a lot to ask. Obviously, wanting Sarah to lead the Myris, it really is a lot. And Nicole asks for it not to be about Sarah for a second. She's trying to have a baby, and Gabby goes to help her. Her husband Russell comes in, tells kids to not play tag in the birth environment. The baby needs to enter peaceful space. Nicole wonders why this baby is taking so long. Gabby says every baby has its own journey. Calvin comes by. Gabby welcomes him to the ceremony. Gabby says they have no soul to induct yet, and Cal asks if there's anything he can do. Nicole says if he can get her kids to shut the fuck up, and Sarah says anger can be a good engine sometimes. They need to channel whatever energy they have right now, and Sarah says they can call him when the baby comes, and Cal says he wants to say and be of help, and Sarah tries to get Nicole to calm down, which the way that Sarah was able to calm her down, I think, is very interesting. Eddie and Hawk then eat the clam rolls, and Eddie tells Hawk that basically that he thought that this wouldn't be, that the roles wouldn't be that good, and it was just like the memory that was good because of his brother. And Hawk agrees that they're awesome, and he really enjoys them. And honestly, I want to eat these clam rolls. I want to know if they're actually a thing, because I want to know if they're actually that good. I kind of want to go to Coney Island, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. But Hawk then asks him when the moment was when he felt the light. Eddie says he'll have to think about it, and Hawk asks if he didn't feel the light, and basically Eddie says I'll have to think about it, and Hawk asks if he didn't feel at the moment he took his vows, because everyone says when it happens they just know, and it really shows how different Eddie is from everyone, because Eddie says he never really felt that. He never felt like he was being lifted off the ground, like Joy once explained to him, and Eddie says he's never felt that feeling, at least not in the movement, and the closest thing to it is probably when he met Sarah, and how she can just lift all his doubts and the pain just by looking at her. And in many ways, I don't think that Sarah really is someone he loves. I think she's more of his healer, and I think she really is a healer for everyone. I think that's really what this is trying to show, that Eddie's not really in love with Sarah. It's more that she's his healer, and the way that she's kind of a healer for everyone, the way that she can take everyone's pain away. I mean, it's really interesting. And Hawk starts to cry, says he loves Ashley, and at first he knows Eddie just thinks it's a transgress, but he truly loves her, and she makes him feel the way that Sarah makes Eddie feel. And when she's not there, he just feels empty and awful, and asks Eddie how one person can do all of that for him, and says now he came and talked to her and it's just not fair. And Eddie tells him to come with him, and he brings him to a payphone, which I love that Hawk didn't know existed. Honestly, I didn't really think that payphones existed that much anymore, especially not someplace like Coney Island, but apparently it does. And Eddie says he had a feeling that it would still be here, and basically he tells Hawk to make a call. And Hawk, of course, he's asking tons of questions. Sorry guys, my computer ran out of space, but getting back to the episode, basically Hawk is thinking all these different options, like, if he doesn't, what if she doesn't want him back, Eddie tells him that he has to face that, or if she does want him back, does he have to leave, which he doesn't really want to do, and Eddie says, no matter what happens, then he'll know. What I love about the scene is that we don't hear what the call says, we don't hear what Hawk says to Ashley, we just know that he says hi to her, and that he misses her, and that's it. And because the rest of the scene focuses on Eddie, he looks at the rocks, and then he sees what looks like his brother, and you see him in disbelief. He's crying. I mean, he knows it can't possibly be true. He knows that his brother is dead, but for whatever reason, he's seeing these visions of his brother, and I really think it's because of those good memories, and the fact that he has so many good memories in Coney Island, the fact that he hasn't been this happy in a while, that is why he is seeing these visions of his brother. The fact that he hasn't, felt this way, and he then approaches the man, but no one is there. Obviously, it's just a vision. Hawk tells Ashley misses her too, and then we go back to Sarah. She coaches Nicole as she gives birth underwater, tells her one more push, the baby will be there, and she does as asked, and the baby seems to be okay, but when Nicole asks why she isn't crying, because obviously that's a problem. The baby would cry. I mean, when a baby first comes out, they cry. Well, this baby's not crying for whatever reason. She has something's wrong, and it turns out the baby has the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck, but luckily Sarah's able to completely save the baby, and she starts to cry. Not just save it completely, like she's able to do it so the baby doesn't have a birth defect, so the baby doesn't have the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, and Nicole's overjoyed that the baby's gonna be okay. Sarah welcomes the baby to their world. She gives like a whole speech on how they're gonna make this the best world the baby wanted, and Nicole thanks Sarah. Mary and Sean then, their energies basically converge, and he asks her if there was anything between her and Cal, and she says that there wasn't, and thinks she was just confused, and now he's got all of her. And again, you don't know if she's necessarily telling the truth. She says she's so happy he's back, and Mary asks him to give her a second when he tries to have sex with her. She then goes into the bathroom, is about to finish flush the drugs down the toilet, but then she doesn't. She actually ends up taking the drugs, and to me, I don't really know what's going on with Mary, if she's telling the truth, if she does really love Sean. I mean, I don't really think she loves Sean. I think Sean loves her a lot more than she loves him, and Calvin tells Sarah what she did in there was magnificent. Sarah says it's no different than what anyone else would have done, including him. He says that she is magnificent, and they make out as Eddie saw in his vision, which is incredible that we finally get to see that here. And Sarah stops him at the last minute because she knows that she does not want this to happen. She knows that she loves Eddie. She doesn't want him to have to see this, and she says that they can't, and she says she knows things have been hard with Eddie, and Cal continues, but then stops and cries, and she asks him what's wrong, and he says there's something he hasn't told her, and he says it's been killing him, and he says he doesn't think he can hide from her any longer, and we're thinking that this is him confessing that he killed Silas, but that's not what he confesses, which again makes me think that he didn't actually kill Silas. She says he can tell her anything. He says straight out that Eddie is lying to her, and she asks if that's why he's him on the walk, and he says it is, and Sarah does not seem surprised at all. Like, it seems like she really did think that Eddie was telling the truth, and that he didn't have this affair, and that basically he was never really had this affair. I think she just kind of wanted to think that, because I don't think Sarah wants to think that he's straying away from his faith. To Sarah, I think that's a worse thing, if he was straying away from his faith, because that's what matters the most to her, and I definitely thought that was very interesting. Basically, Eddie's at the boardwalk. He sees a flock of seagulls along with his brother, walks to him, his brother smiles to him, and Eddie cries, knowing he's not actually there, and that Coney Island really just bringing back those good memories. It's a really sad scene, but I think Aaron Paul really sold it there. There's no dialogue in that scene. You can just see Eddie, and he knows his brother's not really there, but he kind of just wants him to be there, and it really could be, he imagines possibility what could happen if his brother was back. He knows he's not. Sarah looks through Eddie's drawers to find evidence he's lying to her, finds tons of missed calls from Alison, assumes the worst, that Eddie is basically having an affair with Alison, Alison. She doesn't, of course, know the reason why. We know, of course, why he's with Alison, but she doesn't know why. And that is how this episode ends. And overall, guys, amazing episode. I really love this episode. I think the scenes between Eddie and Hawk really were great. But like I said, things really are about to get crazy. And the fact what's going on with Cal, I really think Cal is cracking. I mean, at this point, he really is cracking. The fact that he is kind of thinking that Silas is dead, I don't really think Silas is dead. I mean, the fact he never actually told Sarah is interesting because we think that's what he's going to tell her. He doesn't tell her that. He tells her about Miranda Frank, not, him not having an affair with Miranda Frank, and basically Cal, I don't think he actually killed Silas. Did he actually kill Silas? We'll see what happens with that. Sarah and Eddie, it's going to be very interesting because I think Sarah's now thinking that Eddie's having an affair with Alison or something like that. I don't really know if that's how I saw it, at least, that she thinks he's having an affair. And we'll have to see what happens next week. That's going to be very interesting. It looks like from the promos that Hawk is going to leave the movement. Like, he's going to decide that if he wants to be with Ashley, that he's going to leave and that that's the best way to do it. But it really seems like that's going to be a very bad decision. It's really going to backfire on him and everyone else. So that's going to be really bad. We'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting as well. As far as Abe goes, like I said, I do not think Abe is done pursuing this case. I feel like even though the fact that, his boss clearly told him that this case is over, he doesn't care. He's going to keep pursuing it because it means a lot to him, and at this point, I feel like it's more of a personal mission than it is just an investigation. This is more him discovering if this movement's actually real, if it can really help him what he wants it to, and I think it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with that. That's going to be very interesting to see if this movement actually does help him. I mean, Mcclusky clearly told him it's done, but I don't really think Abe wants to believe that it's over. He wants to think that there is still a possibility, and I think that's very interesting. Eddie and these visions of his brother, I feel like it's going to continue. I feel like Eddie really is going back to those good days and he wants to go back to them, but he just can't because his brother is dead. But why is he having these visions? Is it really just Coney Island, or is he going to continue to have these visions? That's very interesting. Let's talk about Sarah and this Pachamama Idol, because there clearly is something about that. I think it really is showing that Sarah doesn't want to be this leader and that she could be this leader. And like the idol, she can unite everyone. She's like a god, and she really is the one to take people's pain away. Remember what Eddie said, that she can take everyone's pain away. She did with Nicole. She did with Cal as well. I mean, it's not just something for Eddie and Sarah. And yes, I do think Hawk and Ashley truly do love each other, but Eddie and Sarah, however, I think it's more of just the fact that Sarah is a healer and that that's what she can do. She can take people's pain away. She doesn't want to face the fact of how powerful she really is, and I think that's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing really how that's going to go, and I really think that's what's going on here. So I'm looking forward to seeing that overall. And I think that's really it. I think overall, guys, was another amazing episode. I really love this episode overall. I love seeing Eddie and Hawk getting closer. You can really see, I think, that Hawk has really discovered more about his father than he ever wanted to, which I think is really great, and I really did love seeing that. Overall, guys, how much you guys saw this episode. I loved your thoughts on it. I thought this was another really great episode. Next week really does look crazy, though. It looks like things are really going to get crazy in these next two episodes, and I really do like that. I hope they do explain some things. Also, what did Cal see in the backseat of that car, and what was on that note? Those are two things we do not know of what's going on. Oh, and Mary as well. Is Mary telling the truth to Sean? Is she telling the truth to Betsy? I mean, I think to me, she's really just trying to discover who she really is. Does she really love Sean? Is it just sexual with her and Betsy? Who does she really love? Does she really have feelings for Cal? Because I feel like she did at some point, but Cal never wanted to get close to her, and then it seemed like she was fading away. But now I feel like Mary's thought that now she doesn't have a chance with Cal. I'm not really sure. That's very interesting as well. Let me know what you guys thought of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts with that. I mean, this really is a show where there are tons of questions, and I really do love that. The show is about, as, something like I said, I think the one thing that I love the most about this episode and the show in general is its imagery. What the show can do with imagery and the powerful imagery and things like that, I think is really great. It's one of the things that really adds to the show, and I really do love that. But anyway, guys, so much you guys saw this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I absolutely love this episode. Amazing stuff overall. I think it's really getting better and better with each episode as it goes on. And we'll see you guys in my next show, which will be for tonight's episode, Game of Thrones, which I'm sorry I did not get a chance to review it. I will see you guys for that, though. Okay, bye.